broadcast network, AFTERBUZZ TV. Over 20 million weekly downloads in over 150 countries, and your number one source for after-show entertainment. AFTERBUZZ TV, the destination for TV superfans. Producing after-shows for over 300 of your favorite TV shows. Interviewing celebrities and showrunners. And bringing you behind-the-scenes exclusives. All thanks to E! Entertainment's Maria Menounos, producer Kevin Undergaro, and internet leader Akamai. Now, let the buzz begin!
Yes, look at that, taking us all the way back to the 60s. Welcome everybody to the 11/22/63 After Show right here on AfterBuzz TV. I'm one of your hosts, Frank Moran, and we're going to be covering Hulu's original series 11/22/63. But as you see, I'm not alone. We've got three other great people on this panel that are going to help me break down every single episode. And you can follow me on Twitter at HappyGoJackie, and I'm joined here by Marielou Mandl.
Yes, you can find me on all social media at Marielou Mandl.
Sasha Horne.
Hi there, at Sasha Horne on Twitter and Instagram. Really want to connect with you guys. Hit me up.
Oh, and the man that I've missed this past week that we've been separated, Michael Clous.
It's been 6 whole days that I haven't seen you, Frank.
That's right. I've been going through withdrawal. But now...
We're back.
Yes, reunited.
You can follow me on Instagram at TheOnlyMC, on Twitter at Michael Clous TV. Hit me up.
There you go. Now, while this is the second episode that debuted last night here,
Yeah.
we missed out last week, but we're going to be covering, as I said last week, 2 episodes this evening here. So 11/22/63. You've got time travel. You got the JFK assassination. You've got James Franco. It's all produced by J.J. Abrams and Brian Burk for Bad Robot, based on the Stephen King novel. The same
So
name.
many big names.
Yes.
If these names do not draw you in to be interested in this show, come on now.
So I'll start off with this. How many of you have read the book?
I have not.
I have not read the book, though I am a huge Stephen King fan. I've probably read 15 to 20 of his books. This book is not one that I've read. I kind of always have mixed feelings about like seeing something before reading it, because then I want to compare and contrast. But I found with certain shows, like for example Game of Thrones, having seen it prior to reading it, I feel like this is another one where I think I'll be okay.
Now, for me, I love Stephen King as well, but I have not read this novel as well. Although I love time travel stories and the JFK assassination, the whole conspiracy about all that stuff. All those kind of stories always like just trip all the triggers for me. So I knew when this was announced, both as a novel, I just should be reading this, but as a series, I was like, yes, this is something I want to see and be a part of. So for you, what was it about this that kind of drew you in and said, like, yeah, I want to make sure I want to watch this?
I'm a huge history guy. I have a political science minor. I was always interested in politics and history and time travel and like what ifs and looking at those conspiracy theories. So that in itself kind of drew me in and wondering, learning more about it. For our generation, we didn't really know much about the Kennedy assassination. Hearing from our parents' generation of they interrupted classes and, it was the first time where they really brought in TVs to class and they watched TV and this breaking news, and it was a huge event. And that's not something that we've really learned about. So I was very curious to learn more about that through this show.
Yeah, and then for me, from all of the promos that I saw, I didn't see like many trailers or anything. I just saw billboards all around town. So I was like, I don't know. Like, I usually wait a little bit to see if these shows catch on. So I have to usually have 3 people tell me to watch it. Like 3 separate people tell me to watch it. But I was on Hulu and I read the description because it was scrolling across the top and it said time travel. I didn't look at anything else. I was like, okay, play.
I think for me, having just come off of Mad Men, this is like the perfect next series for me. I really love period pieces, and I'm really obsessed with like that time period. I think just everything about it, from the decor of homes to just the simplicity of life. I just am really into that. So I knew that I had to see it. That coupled with the fact that Stephen King was behind it.
Would you live in the 60s?
I don't know. I think it would be different for me personally.
Yes.
I would probably be in
like,
California
yes.
in the 60s. I feel like I would be more, accepted there. I'm from the South, so I don't know if I would want to be there in the 60s, but I definitely think like that life of, moving west and migrating west and just sort of like finding yourself in the arts and entertainment. I think that I could definitely see myself fitting in there.
Yeah, you're right. It's so much simpler. I mean, watching it, it's so simple. I mean, it's back before you had, TV and everything, before you had Hulu. we had cell phones, and it was just a very easy, backwoods living a little bit, which is not all bad.
No. Well, you did mention Hulu, so this is streaming on Hulu. But we have Hulu and Netflix as our streaming services there, and they sort of have different ways they approach a series. Netflix will just do the binge watching; they'll put everything up at once and let you do that. Hulu's doing the thing where they release it just 1 week at a time, as we're kind of accustomed to with network television. So, do you have a preference for either way? Do you want to be able to just watch everything at one time, or do you like being able to wait a week between episodes?
Oh, that's a tough question because I'm the type of person who will binge watch something and get almost to the end and then I'll stop because I'm like, no, I don't want it to be over yet. So, I mean, as much as I love to have everything come out at once, I kind of like, just letting the suspense build and having something to look forward to each week.
It drives me crazy. I like to binge watch, but here at AfterBuzz, usually our shows are week to week. So last year I did Bloodline, and even though it was all available, we still waited week to week to watch it, and it drove me crazy.
You were going to be like one of those students in school that always read the next chapter, just because you were enjoying
just want
it.
to see what's happening. I already want to go get the book and see what happens.
You hate ending on cliffhangers.
I just need to know, finish the story. And that's why I love movies, right? Because in an hour and a half, I'm done.
Yeah.
And I know, great, we finished that. Unless it's one that has a sequel.
That's it. Yeah,
and then I have to wait 3 years.
Exactly. Well, let's get right into it. We're talking about episode 1, The Rabbit Hole. So right off the bat, the opening sequences. I'm always a fan of interesting, unique sequences. You brought up Mad Men, that you covered that. That always had a really distinct opening sequence. I really enjoyed the way this was done with the use of miniatures, clippings, and things like that. The red thread kind of being a common tie for if you're dealing with a conspiracy, possibly. Did you guys have any thoughts on that?
I just love the storytelling. He had to keep it really simple because this person obviously is someone who has a learning disability or something to that effect. But at the same time, just it was just so powerful hearing that the situation happened and then seeing starting with the close up on his face and him just standing there, obviously very nervous. But he's nervous about presenting, not about the content. And everyone in the classroom is just sort of like, whoa, this is deep. But I just loved that sort of juxtaposition of those two things against one another. This guy with this this learning disability, he can barely even put a sentence together, but he's up there and he's sharing this deep dark secret, and the class is blown away.
Yeah, it really hits you right off the bat. I mean, there's no gradual getting into this. No, it's immediate. That it's hard. It's hard and gripping.
Yeah, we have I believe a janitor, Harry, who's recounting the story of 1960. On Halloween night, his family was murdered by his father, who came around with a sledgehammer and just bashed everybody's head in. And he gets really into just very descriptive, truthful, emotional detail about all of this. And we find James Franco there, our lead character, Jake. He's a teacher. This was an adult continuing education class. I should be taking one of those for my speech diction. But you can see he's just blown away by this story.
And you get to know him a little bit too, just watching him, and you can tell that he's not. He's a very helpful guy. That's what I judge from that initial sequence, is that he's a guy who wants to help. Obviously, he's teaching this class after hours, wanting to do stuff, but you can tell that he's just not happy. That he's not happy where he is. And so it kind of sets the tone a little bit that he wants more. He wants to do something else. He wants an adventure.
But he loves the written word. You can tell when something's written really well, that just really engages him there.
And loves being taken on an adventure. So, what does he say about the story? He's like, what was good about this is that we got to know him. Which is what we're getting to do with him. Because whenever that was happening, knowing that this came from a book, I was like, oh, this is he is another big literary character for us to follow on a journey with, even though now he's on a Hulu show.
And we find out after the class, he gives Harry an A+, and Harry comes up to him afterwards and says, I'm going out for this promotion. Could you give me a recommendation letter?
And that he'd never gotten an A+ in anything.
Yes.
It's so touching.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then knowing that this was a time travel show, when this story came, I was like,
You're starting to plant some seeds.
Yeah, I was like, go for it. Do it.
Looking at 1960, 1963, you knew it was just too close to be coincidence.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we do find out we're located in Lisbon, Maine, and we follow Jake after class. He's going into the diner. You see that he frequents Al's diner quite a bit, enjoying a hamburger at incredibly cheap prices.
$1.35 or something like that.
What a great deal for a burger.
And that's something that I just love about Stephen King. He always pays tribute to where he's from, Maine.
Yes.
Almost all of his pieces or books and stories are set there. because that's where he grew up. I've only been to Maine once, and I did go and find his house. And it looks super creepy with these big gargoyles out front, like how you would think his house would look. Yeah.
So as you drove around the town there, could you kind of see like, yes, this is very descriptive of what he writes about?
I mean, it's really interesting. Like, I was there because of a flight issue. We ended up being delayed there and had to stay overnight. And everyone's just like, where can we get a beer? They're like, nowhere.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh,
You can't get alcohol after 7 p.m.
Was
They're
it a
not
small
in stores.
town?
Very small. And it's the capital, I believe. Bangor's the capital,
Bangor,
isn't it?
yeah.
So.
Oh, wow. So we find Al, the owner of the diner, there is played by Chris Cooper.
Yep.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. I'd be able to have him in the series. And then we have his, we see Jake's now ex-wife, Christy, comes in. They're going to settle up some business, sign the divorce papers right there at the diner. Perfect place to want to end your marriage right there in a diner while you're enjoying
Booth
some...
number 3.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you know they probably were going there for 12 years because later we find out that Al and Jake have known each other for about 12 years. So and Al immediately knew who the girl was, and there was definitely a sadness from Al of like, oh, I wish you kids could work it out.
Yeah, and you see as they sign the divorce papers, Al ducks back into the back, and then after Christy leaves, he comes out and wearing something completely different than what he's wearing when he went in,
With a beard,
with some stubble and stuff like that, and just bleeding and looking really terrible, and he passes out there in the restaurant. So then they take him home, and Al says, "If you come back tomorrow, I will explain everything to you." So it seems like, which I was like, why do I have to come back tomorrow? Why can't you just explain everything to me right now?
I don't know if I would have left. I mean, someone like that, that's a pretty deep situation just to leave. And I would think someone who's pays as close a detail as James Franco's character, that he would, not just notice that something's different, notice the facial hair, notice the clothes. But
well, he did mention it where he's like 5 minutes ago
He's
you were fine, and now you're like a wreck.
Or something.
Yeah, because Al does tell Jake that I do have cancer, and he's like, what? How did that happen in 5 minutes?
Yeah.
What happened here? So then we get Franco's there at the school, and he's showing a class of documentary. And they see the class. He's back teaching high school students, so they don't care about this documentary. You see them all just surfing the web, throwing around their pages, things like one kid is in the back constantly looking at this video on his iPhone.
Of a parrot.
The parrot just jamming to some music there.
I mean, we've all watched videos like that.
I've done it.
It really is.
Maybe not in class, but yeah, we've seen them.
Just like animals dancing to a beat. That's always, I don't know.
Have you not experienced this? We need to find some for
All
you.
right.
People, please tweet them at him.
That's really great. Animals dancing to great music there. But then Jake heads back to the restaurant. Goes with Al, and they say, well, as you were saying, Marielou, that he's known him for 12 years. Do you trust me? No, not really. Still, even after 12 years, not sure if we trust you. But he's going to tell him something crazy. And he needs to do it right now, and then they can talk about it later. He just needs him to go into this closet, spend as long as he wants in there, just look around, and come back out, and then he'll tell him everything. So a friend of yours tells you that. Are you going to be just like, yeah, sure, I'll go along with whatever you got to say?
Well, if he's like... He looks like he's going through a weird time. Maybe he's having a mental breakdown. You want to be gentle. Like, I'd be like, all right, I'll go step in there if it'll make you calm down.
Yeah.
I would.
There you go. And this closet is incredibly deep. Just incredible. And he's always worried
nothing
about
else
spiders.
in it.
Yeah, nothing else in
Completely
it.
open.
Yes.
It's not like he's pushing things aside to get through.
No, he just keeps walking and walking and walking, and then all of a sudden he falls. And when he lands on gravel. He stands up and he's outside, and he looks around, and you can just tell by just like the cars, the period clothing, that he is somewhere in the past.
Yeah.
Now, something like that happens to you. Do you feel like, we've grown up watching time travel movies, reading time travel stories. If you had an opportunity to be traveling back in time, do you feel like you could hit the ground running? Do you feel like you'd be like, what is happening?
I think it would be really hard. I mean, he immediately stood out, especially because of his attire. And I think that's kind of like the jarring thing. Like, he stands out like a sore thumb, and he's just getting all of these looks. Even if they didn't just see him magically appear out of thin air, the fact that, his attire, I feel like it would be very difficult to acclimate that quickly.
I would be curious, just like the context of how people see him as he arrives.
I was curious about that as well. Like, does he just show up out of thin air?
There were three things that I was kind of curious and kind of didn't like. Is that one, the first time that he entered, he fell. And no other time when he enters do you see him falling. You see him just kind of walking around. You would think that people would notice him falling, number two. And then how does he get back?
Yeah, like how does he know where the spot is every time?
Yeah, that's the only thing, especially if he spends any length of time there. When he comes back without any kind of like familiar landmarks when he just left, like how would you know exactly this spot?
You just kind of walk around that gravel lot until you're like,
over and over again.
You start jumping into random places. Nope, still not there.
And that guy's like, bro, you don't belong here.
Yeah.
But as he looks around, we see some things that are going to become sort of like touchstones to whenever he comes back to. We see the milkman dropping the milk bottle. We see the car, the pink and white car driving by, playing the song right there that we hear, and we see these people coming by. And then we also have this homeless person, like sort of a bum, as they describe
Who's
him.
a main character.
Yeah, who tells
to an
him, you
extent.
don't belong here. You do not belong here. And he's like, what the hell is going on? So he dives back in, and he's back into the present. And so he's talking to Al about this, and they find out that this is, as Al describes it, a rabbit hole. It's been here ever since he's had the diner, and this leads back to one specific date, October 21st, 1960. It always goes back to that date.
Same location, too.
Yes.
As they find out with the tree, where he actually writes on the tree.
And we find out that Al wants him to go back to stop the assassination of JFK. Yeah, I mean, that's pretty lofty goal to be setting out to one of your friends. Like, all right, go back and stop the assassination of one of our greatest presidents.
Yeah, the last successful assassination of a U.S. president.
Yes. I mean, it'd be one thing like, hey, stop my mom and dad from doing this terrible thing, or stop my uncle from, losing a bet. But no, to go back, stop President Kennedy from getting killed. Like, that's a lot to put on a friend.
Do you find that he talked really about that too, of the consequences and the ripple effect of if you stop JFK? Do you ever think that of like, do you dwell on that, the past of like, oh, what if this hadn't happened?
Butterfly effect stuff.
Do you think about that?
Yeah, I totally think about that kind of stuff, because if one thing didn't happen, right? Maybe you didn't choose. Like, I was almost going to live in England, right? But then had a family member pass away, so that kept us in Florida. So then I went to this college. Like, had that not happened, I would have been in England. Could have been a completely different path. I wouldn't be here.
Do you think of it with regret, though, or just in general, just thinking about it?
Just consideration, because, like, obviously, as far as we know at this point, we can't go back and change it. So, like, why beat up, yourself about it? But, of course, I think all sorts of people think about that.
But I will give it up for Chris Cooper's character, because usually when we think about going back to that butterfly effect, we do it very personally. We think about just our personal lives, and he's thinking bigger picture. What the assassination of JFK did to the timeline, and if he were still alive, the changes it would not make just for him, but just for the entire country.
Something else that I'm curious to see if they'll ever touch on is why just the rabbit hole just went back to 1960, or if that's just something that the first episode, and obviously none of us have read the book, but why 1960? I mean, just why that...
Yeah, I feel like the bum is going to play a part in that, because we do see him pop up in several other locations through this. So I feel like he's got some sort of tie to time or whatever it might be in the rabbit hole.
Yeah, I feel like there is a significance to that time that will come up, because it can't be arbitrary. It's like with Back to the Future. Like, they went back to a specific date. Like, that is where like the timeline split. That like has the moment of significance. And I think typically in time travel things, there is like a moment of significance.
I thought of that so often, that Back to the Future, where Biff goes back and then you have an alternate reality. I thought of that so much during this show, because if you change one thing, are you not changing the entire course of history for good or bad?
Yeah, it's always in the 50s and 60s, apparently.
Yeah,
And even if he was asking, go back and do this, but the fact that you have to live there for 3 years, like, I know that's a long time of living in another time in society, even with like all of the hookups or cheats that he gave him to like make it happen. It's still like, you're asking a lot, guy. Like,
yeah, that's for sure. And we do find that it always goes back to 1960 right there, and that it's always that in real time you can spend as long as you want back in the past, but when you come back, only 2 minutes will have passed in real time or present day. And then we also find out that if you decide you go back once and you change something, you go back again, what you've done before is erased. It erases everything you've done before, and
you
you're starting.
reset.
Yep, everything gets reset. So that's kind of lays out the rules for what our time travel story is going to be, which is always nice. I do appreciate when they kind of lay out the rules, and so that's going to pay off and have some sort of consequences as the story continues.
If that's the case, then he goes back in time and kills JFK, and then comes back to the present. It just erases it.
Yeah, so like if he...
No.
Wait,
no. If he
wait,
goes
hold on, what's
back,
the
if he
question?
comes
And never
back to
goes
the
back
present
again.
and then goes back to the past again, it erases
resets.
it.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, because what he did with the tree is that he carved it in, he came back and he saw that it was still there, because Chris Cooper was having him say, oh, do you wonder what would actually happen, or that it would actually have an impact?
Yes.
Yeah, with that kind of thing, I was curious of why, like, or if maybe this had already happened, with Al knowing that you can reset. If Al just went back and killed the guy who was supposedly the one who killed JFK.
Yes, because that's a
Harvey
question that popped up.
Oswald?
Yes.
Yeah, like if he just went back and just like offed him and came back, let's see what happened.
See, and that's what I didn't, because he asks them, like, why didn't you kill me? It's like he wasn't going to shoot him on a maybe. And I'm thinking, if everything
It doesn't
resets,
matter.
yeah, why not? Just kill him and then come back and see if it did change anything.
Yeah.
yeah, that is. I feel like that's going to come back up, because there's something a little fishy with that little detail.
And then I was also curious on if because Al knows that this spot is where the rabbit hole is, did he stumble upon it, then build the diner? Did he plant a seed to himself as a child and like give him like this, you know, buy the lot, buy the real estate and like leave it to himself? You know, like where did this come into Al's possession?
Yeah, I mean, I guess all we know from what he said, at least so far in the story, is that it was here ever since the diner's been here.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So whether it's something that he went back, but then I think like every time he goes back, he'd have to make that trip back to himself and kind of always plant that seed.
Right.
I wonder if he just like was cleaning one day and just stumbled upon it. Like, how do you
Oh my
find
gosh.
something like that?
So many mysteries. I can't wait to find them out.
So he wants Jake to go back in time, and he's dragging his feet. He doesn't want to do something like this, and Al gets pissed. He throws him out of the house. Like, I knew it. I knew you wouldn't do it. You'd always have an excuse. You're afraid to make any kind of stand up and make a difference in life.
That's a big decision, though.
Yeah.
That's a really big decision to just okay, let's go to the diner right now. Now that we've talked for the past 2 hours, abandon everything, come with me.
Hey, you're only gone for 2 minutes. Go ahead.
Yeah, because I mean, it's one thing. Even though it's 2 minutes here, it's still you're waiting there for 3 years back in the past to be able to do anything. And so I can understand why somebody might be a little initially hesitant about doing it.
Definitely.
But he does have a little restless dream there, and he comes back, and the next day he finds out that Al has passed away during the
So
night.
he has
there,
to do it.
Yeah, so he feels like, all right, I'm going to do it. He goes back in the past there. But he knows that all we do know is we kind of flashback in this and continuing episodes. So they did have some long conversation about the kind of research that Al's done and how Al giving him instructions on how to better prepare to blend in the 60s. So yeah, so he hops back into the 60s, guys. He does it. We got Jake back
He's
in the
there.
60s, yes.
I'm just thinking, you know, if you trust Al so much that you're going to do this, why the heck do you not follow his advice when you get there?
Yeah, well, that's like
I just feel like
Yeah.
classic time traveler mistake is just be too flashy.
yeah,
I mean,
that
definitely.
car.
Yeah, I mean, he starts off already, gets a suit, he gets a haircut, gets a goatee trimmed. He's doing good there.
Then
but
he's like, I look good. Hey, I have this money.
Swag. I'm gonna get this flashy car.
Yeah.
And we find out a little night he meets Alice, who is his boss, who we find out back in the present day is not going to give Harry that promotion no matter what because he's a little slow from what happened to his injuries back then when his father murdered his whole family.
And she's just bitter.
She's just bitter.
Obviously, because he asked, you know, do you plan on teaching here? Oh, no.
Yeah, I mean, I'm getting out of town. My mom doesn't know about it yet. And you just see this woman that's so full of hope and spirit,
Right.
and to know where she ends up. It's, you know, like,
Kinda
no.
sad.
I think we all have those friends, though, maybe from high school. I do. That are like
Definitely.
wanted to do something, and now you look at them and kind of feel bad for them to an extent, but
There's still
their-
time.
their
You can
life.
still get out.
That's right.
You can always change it all.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so, but we find out that, of course, we said he was too flashy. He bought that really sweet car, which cleans him out, and now he's got to use one of the things that Al gave him, which was a book with all the sort of sports stats on there. So you can make bets, be able to keep some income coming there.
Too flashy.
Too
flashy,
flashy.
yeah.
Bets the inning, or bets the round.
Yeah, so he bets that, and the guys at the bar are not happy with him kind of winning this bet because
It's like
such a long
thousands of
night.
dollars, right?
It would
That
be
was-
$3,500.
That was
Yeah, I
another
mean-
interesting thing throughout to see how much things cost.
Yeah.
And you see that
you
with
know
the burger.
how much money
you
that
see-
really,
yeah.
really was.
Yeah,
then.
and throughout both the first two episodes where, you know, he's staying, like, I think episode 2 or whatever, not to give too much away, but he's staying at the one house, and it's like,
Yeah,
oh,
$3 for a week.
Right, $3.
In advance.
Yeah.
She was
I'm gonna
very-
need it all up front.
And he's like, oh, all right.
35
So-
cents for a beer. I saw, yeah, it's interesting at the bar.
That guy must have been a pretty big bookie to have $3,500.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that shows you just how like huge that was and
Yeah.
how that he should not have like done that.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
He wasn't subtle about it at all. So they send somebody to get him. He escapes though, runs off, and he makes his way to Dallas. Finds himself a boarding house to stay in there under Al's recommendation.
Yeah, but not to gloss over it, he did end up using that bird video.
He did. The bird
Yeah.
video paid back.
Came in
Yeah.
handy.
But I
Saved
was
the
curious
day.
about that because typically, like when you send someone a video, don't you send them a link,
Exactly.
not like the file? So
Yeah.
did he have Wi-Fi? Was his 3G
there were no
working?
towers
Yeah.
back then, so
Yeah, so he must have gotten the file.
good
But
point, yeah.
but that I was like I side-eyed a little. You guys didn't think this through.
And so once he gets to this boarding house, Al is instructed him to make sure you prepare, you do your homework, you do everything you need to do.
He's got time.
Yeah, and he says, but
nothing
don't,
but time, right?
but as he says, you're gonna feel like you're gonna feel apart from other people, and that feeling doesn't go away. You gotta tread lightly and don't get close to anyone. And you see, the past doesn't want to be changed because sometimes it'll push back no matter what you want to do. You get that sense when you're up against a moment that time doesn't want changed. You can feel it pushing back, and he kind of pushes his luck because he goes to finds a payphone and he tries to call his dad. Who we find out at the beginning of the series there he died as Jake was flying to go see him on his last night. So he tries to make that connection with his dad back then, and you see time does not want that to happen. It shorts out the conversation. And as he leaves,
lights flicker.
Yes.
And that seems like any time that he tries to do something, lights start flickering. So that's kind of a telltale sign that he's not supposed to be doing something.
Yes, and as he leaves the phone booth and turns around to maybe give it one more shot, then we see a car just smash right through that phone booth. And when he goes up to see the woman to see if she needs help, I mean, she's clearly dead, it seems like, because there's a lot of blood coming from the head wound, but she opens up her eyes and says, "You're not supposed to be here."
And what an impressive stunt! Like
Yes.
For a second, I thought it was the woman from the park earlier in the episode.
Yes,
Yeah.
I
for a
thought it
second
was
too.
her, but I was like, oh no, it's not, because it was the red car and blonde hair. So I was like, wait a minute. Oh, okay.
Yeah. So and Jake goes back and does find out that time did indeed push back and may miss him with the car, but did not miss him with the boarding house. Set that to fire, burned out pretty much, but left everything he had in tatters and killed the young son of the owner of the boarding house.
Yeah. It's amazing. You think, something like that there's been a couple TV series that have done that where stuff doesn't change. I think the movie Groundhog Day. I mean, think of all these movies that have gone back to the past. And Groundhog Day is one where he tries to save the old man, and he tries continually. He dies every single time. So sometimes, and I look at that of what will that do as he eventually gets closer to JFK of will time allow for itself to be changed?
Yeah, and you even find that when he fills one other mission, since he's going to be waiting for 3 years to see if Oswald tries to kill General Walker. He says, follow this guy George, who may have ties, maybe Oswald's handler. We don't know for sure. And he recounts the night that he tried to follow him and didn't succeed because he got caught in a little fryer at the restaurant and missed out on the whole conversation.
Yep.
So, but tells Jake enough that he knows to avoid missing that little fire that breaks in the restaurant and is able to get a seat right at the table. But you see time pushing back that whole way.
Yeah.
The chandelier.
Yeah, dropping the chandelier down. Even when he's trying to listen to the conversation, the noises and the ambient sounds in the bar just kicking up constantly, trying to prevent it from hearing what's
And
being
it's crazy
said.
to think that we're still 3 years out. So
Yes.
it's already pushing back, 3 years in advance. What happens when you're a
Get to
month
the day
away?
of,
The day of. Then I can imagine it's
Really
really going to
interesting.
start to get crazy.
No, for sure. And so all he does hear for sure from George is Lee Harvey Oswald. That's enough that all he can hear. So enough for him to believe that what Al was saying was true, that he was involved with the CIA, but he just doesn't know if he actually recruited Oswald to be a killer for the CIA or not. They don't know exactly for sure for that. And that's actually when he does go back and find out that the house has been burned down and the young son has been killed. And that's enough. That's enough for Jake. He's like, that's it. I'm out.
Yeah.
This is too
Start
much.
driving back.
Yeah, I mean, I can understand that. I mean, when you see time pushing back, I mean, I guess you understand, like, maybe this is a little bit more daunting and a little bit over my head.
You
than I
wonder,
thought.
too, if he thinks, if he goes back to the future and then goes right back into the present, if that will save that boy. If he thinks about that, if he can just do a real quick in and out then and prevent everything that just happened to him.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, kind of reset the timeline. Yeah.
Imagine how that whole family's life just, progresses. Who knows what happens
Yeah.
after that?
Yeah.
And just the things that could have been sparked or set off by him taking that one action. It's like...
And here's the thing. Maybe the fire had happened anyways. Maybe that kid had died. That's something that maybe he wasn't thinking about, but you automatically place the blame on yourself. Yeah.
Yeah, I was thinking that they were going to set up that boy to be somebody significant in the future. That
Same.
maybe we didn't line it up yet, but they didn't bring it back yet. So maybe he isn't. Maybe it's just sad.
Yeah, unless it resets, unless he comes back and it goes with the president, comes back to the past. Maybe that boy does pay off in some fashion, but we don't know. But as he leaves Dallas, he finds himself in Kentucky, looks at a map and keeps having Harry's story playing in his head, and realizes that he's just about 30 miles away from where this all went down with Harry's family, and he happens to be back in 1960, and it's just a few days off from Halloween.
And that's a good end to episode 1. I thought they did a good job of leaving it at an end and making you wanting more.
Yeah, where he can do this one thing.
Yeah. And it's almost, reading and looking how it plays out, it's almost a test of can he do something good in the past. And, looking at what he does with Harry's family and his dad and saves his family, that he can do something good. I'm not going to, go too much into that, but...
Like getting what you were saying, that most people would think of something personal to go back and change. So he needed to do something personal before something bigger.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like he's giving up, but he doesn't want to be this whole trip to be for naught. He wants at least that there's something they can do, and he know that there's one person that he can make a difference for, as opposed to something huge and enormous, like trying to figure out this whole conspiracy behind the JFK assassination.
Yeah.
So that leads us right into episode 2, the kill floor. Now, we meet young Harry as a boy. They're not being treated really well. I feel like that seems to be a common thing with Stephen King stories, that young kids, man, there's bullies, and kids aren't treated well by bullies.
Was Stephen King bullied when he was a kid? Do we know that?
I don't know. I know he definitely talked about, his childhood and not necessarily fitting in. I don't know that he said anything about being bullied, but I can imagine someone that smart and, how writers are just sort of different from everyone else.
Yeah, and so we find out that Harry gets he gets spit on by some bullies, gets his pants thrown in the river, and so he's got to walk through town just in his just in a shirt and his tidy whities with one shoe over to the pharmacy/soda shop, which is always I always love those pharmacy/soda shops.
You get everything you need.
Yeah, absolutely,
including a new pair of shorts.
Yep. Yeah. So obviously this wasn't the first time that's happened to this kid. He had like a stash of shorts.
Yeah. And you can tell obviously that you look back of when the first episode started, that kind of obviously had an effect on him, because he doesn't seem like he has a mental disability right away, but just years and years of bullying, and then obviously having the traumatic experience happen to his family, that shows you a little more about his character.
Yeah, and at least looking back, I don't know if he got hurt, at least, or you do see some blood on his head. I don't know if he got like a glancing blow from a sledgehammer or anything like that, but I feel like he was a little mentally compromised by that whole incident.
That, or maybe possibly before, because that was something they were taunting him about.
That's right.
That he doesn't talk or something to that effect. They were saying to him when they threw him in.
Yeah, calling him Harry the Fairy.
Yeah.
Yeah. But as he goes into the soda shop there, he does also find Jake, who happens to be just inside there as well, and looking for a place to stay while he's trying to figure out the best way that he can help Harry and prevent all this tragedy that's coming his way.
Now, how creepy was Jake being just staring at Harry?
Yeah.
This little boy in his underwear.
Maybe back then it wasn't as alarming as it would be nowadays.
I was like, James Franco, look away! Good Lord.
I knew that he had to be careful too, and I think he knew this too. With small towns like that, everybody knows everybody.
Exactly.
So you got to be really careful who you're tipping your hat to, of what your plans are. Why are you staying here? Like, there's nothing
no one
here.
Stays here.
Yeah, that's
not
what
even
he
a
said.
hotel here.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's even said because there's a lady a family that will rent out a room for rent, but they're doing it usually guys with bad marriages and things like that. So everybody's always just kind of like, what's going on? They're always more quick to judge you as somebody that's unsavory.
And when he goes to the bar and meets Harry's father for the first time, then he kind of says, "Oh, why are you looking for him? Oh, someone told me about him." They're gonna call you on that, as he did.
Yeah, so they meet Frank at the bar. Jake meets him for the first time, and they seem to get along okay. I mean, initially it's a little tense there for a second, but then we cut to them. They've been talking for some length of time, enjoying some beers, and he's quoting James Agee to the guys. And of course, Frank's wingmen have no idea what's going on. Frank seems like he's really enjoying at least talking to somebody that has a little bit more sophistication than the guys that he's usually hanging out with in town.
But I mean, to me, this is just one of those things. It's like, why? Like, why would you get drunk with someone who you know is a murderer? Like, why would you do that to yourself? Why would you let your guard down? If I were him, I would have been pretending to drink and letting him get drunk, And I think he was doing a little bit too much talking and not enough listening in that situation.
Yeah, I was concerned about him getting drunk there also because in Harry's story, he says that, my dad was a nice guy, but not when he was drunk. And I was like, oh, he's got a temper after some liquor.
Yeah.
So, why are you putting yourself there?
Yeah, and because when we see it earlier, where we do see him, Jake watching Harry's family outside the window, we see the dad coming up. It seems like he's a very loving sort of guy. So I can understand the initial hesitation of you're reading one side of the story, but maybe there's another side of the story of this person when his first time he ever actually sees him, very loving with his kids, bringing them in the car, having a good time with them. So I can understand maybe it's tough to when you're faced with the reality of something. You're like, okay, maybe I don't know. Let's see what happens.
And
he's served too, so you think you give him the benefit of the doubt there.
Yeah, but
and their choice in actor even makes you feel it's Josh
Charismatic.
Duhamel.
Yeah.
All right,
Exactly.
it's Fergie's husband. It's fine.
But that kind of goes away quickly because Jake is taken by Frank and his boys to the butcher plant. Where he so he comes with 3 generations of butchers. Frank does, and so one of the things that he did is he worked on the kill floor. And now his dad was known as the Bambino on the kill floor because he could take a sledgehammer.
Babe Ruth.
Yes, like Babe Ruth, he could crush a cow's skull just in one swing.
Oh.
Yeah, and so they bring out a little calf, and they give Jake the sledgehammer. They want to see what kind of man he is. Did he struggle like everybody else down in the dirt, like everybody else? They want to see what kind of man he is, and Jake can't do it.
It's the first time that we see Jake too having to kill someone, which is something that he would probably have to do if we're talking about stopping the JFK assassination. And how, what is his toughness, his mental toughness of being able to do that?
For it? And I mean, a little bit. I mean, I feel like, he insulted them, over those drinks by saying, well, people down in the dirt, you matter too. I mean, I feel like that was insulting, and I think that this was kind of like their little payback, their way to kind of get him and show, hey, you city slicker, you know, this is how country boys do it.
Yeah, and so much respect to the filmmakers who are doing this, like from like J.J. Abrams to this, like, everybody. Like the tension when it got to this point, I was like losing my mind.
I thought sure like someone was gonna die and it wasn't gonna be the calf.
Yeah, it was like something is going to go down, because that tension is built as soon as we meet Josh Duhamel's character. Like when he walks in, and it's like in the bar, like when we see him at the car, like, oh yeah, we're not quite sure, but in the bar, the way that the bartender reacts, he walks in, it's very dark, we see the smoke, like the way that they put that together, like from then on, we're like, oh, this is not going to end well for someone.
He's a bad dude.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we see Frank says, all right, Jake, you suck, and takes this sledgehammer and just kills the cow himself there. Yep, and they take off. Jake, for realizing, okay, Frank is not a really good man, I've got to do something, goes over to his wife's Doris, his estranged wife Doris's house, and says that he's from a prize company and that she's won a prize for a 3-day all-expense-paid trip to Lexington and a Halloween festival. And it could be her and her 3 kids. They could go off and have a great time, as a way to try to prevent them from being there when this tragedy is supposed to occur. Once again, he's trying to push against time to make sure that Doris and the rest of her family are safe, so Harry can have a regular life when he gets back to the present. And then we see him. We next see Jake over there eating dinner at the boarding house that he's staying at with Arliss and Edith.
So happy, like, did it?
I did it.
Yeah, but then he has a really down to earth conversation with Arliss, where he does throw in. I served in MASH 4077 in Korea, so nice MASH reference there.
Yeah.
There you go. Yes, that's the way. I guess that'd be the great thing, to be able to go back in time. You could always just use current day references to really fool people, and they would buy it.
Just say that you're Clint Eastwood.
Yeah, there you go. Yes. Marty McFly did her best. But Arliss tells him the story of how he won this Bronze Star, which he won't let his wife hang in the house. And after hearing that Jake served, he then says, well, you know what it's like killing a man. And he tells him the story of this Bronze Star, and it's just a harrowing story.
Again, foreshadowing to having to kill someone.
Yeah, because what is his line is that, you know, his line is,
last thing you can say about killing a man is that it's brave.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then before they can really pursue that moment any further, Frank shows up. And you can just tell that Frank's not dropping by just to say hi. You can really tell this is
something's up.
Yes.
And the woman who runs the house there, that's renting the room to Jake, like, definitely has an opinion about Frank.
Yeah, you can tell Frank is not liked.
She's tough as nails.
Yes.
Yeah, I love her.
Annette O'Toole, great, wife of Michael McKean. You know, Clark Kent's mother in Smallville, original Lois Lane in Superman films. Jake takes Frank takes Jake to his butcher shop. Like, that's it. I got out of the butcher plant. I opened my own butcher shop. Check this out, and then brings out Doris. And Doris has got a shiner on her.
Yeah.
Yes.
Not the first time.
No, not the first time. And Frank has his way. It's not going to be the last. And he comes out and he sees like the ticket that Jake had given Doris, and it's like, why are you trying to screw with my wife?
It's amazing too, and that says a lot about his character. In that, you know, he knows he's estranged. And he knows that they're not going to end up together, but he still wants like possession over her, and so that shows the controlling nature that he has.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and so Jake goes from this, then he goes to buy a gun. He's like, all right, you know, I got to be prepared. So he goes by. I feel like that interaction was only $20 to buy like a Colt.
Yeah, and that scene was so great because the woman's like, "No, you're Crazy. Why?" And she's like, "I'm just screwing with you. You can buy all the guns you want."
And then Jake has a little dream, recalling a conversation that he has with Al about time pushing back. How did you know the time pushed back? And Jake tells him, or Al tells him the story of trying just to help a girl that had been hurt in a random hunting accident. And he just tried like something simple like that, something that really wasn't of any consequence, and time kept pushing back against him. And then he said that basically that Al says that the past gave him cancer. That he went back 1 month before he went back on that last trip. He was perfectly clean bill of health. What goes back comes back, and he has cancer. So I feel like, yeah, that's and when Jake wakes up, he's got some food poisoning, so he can already kind of get the twinges of like time is trying to push back on this. But he doesn't stop. He heads over to the pharmacy / soda shop and finds out like, just eat white food. Just eat white food. That's what's gonna. Those great old '60s remedies for what ails you. Yeah, if you eat white food, you're gonna be just fine.
And he bought underwear, right?
Yeah, because he was gonna poop in his pants.
He's like, it's not gonna stop me.
But then we also find out that so far this episode, a couple times we see Billy the bartender. He's also been just kind of observing what's going on. And that's going to kind of pay off in a second there, because now Halloween night has come. Jake's going to go out and try to prevent this from happening. He's got his gun. He's going to go walk around town, and he's going to get to Harry's house. And he's going to wait to see what happens because he knows at 8 o'clock this all goes down. But then he gets attacked by Billy. He's got a knife with him. And you think that maybe Billy might be the one that actually maybe murdered. They're trying to throw some red herrings at you. Maybe he's the one that really did the killing, and Harry had it wrong. Maybe the dad was framed for this. Who knows?
Yeah.
But then you find out that Billy's mad at him because he believes that Frank killed his sister and her baby. And nobody believes him because it happened when he was just a kid.
Yeah, and he seems like a good guy. And that is what I've kind of taken from that, of his initial reaction. If he doesn't want anyone to get hurt, even if he thinks it's justified.
Yeah.
And that was his ex-wife, correct? His first wife? Is that what he said?
Yeah, his first.
It would have been Frank's first wife.
First wife.
Yes.
That guy's sister.
Yeah.
Yes.
Wow.
That, but it seems like nobody could prove that he was the actual one that murdered him. And I guess he buried the body somewhere, and who knows where she is.
And this was really exciting, though, because this is the first person that Jake is told that he's a time traveler.
Yeah.
So I was like, this guy's important.
He played the card.
Yeah, which, I guess seems like, in that kind of a high-stakes situation when you know the clock is ticking and you're just trying to get this guy off of you any way you know how, I guess you're just going to just say, like, I'm from the future, even though as crazy as that, as an excuse that might sound to somebody.
I might want to use that at any point. Like, if somebody's coming after me, I'll just be like, I'm from the future!
And Billy says, like, well, you got it wrong because it's 8:05 and nothing's happened yet. But then they hear a scream and they realize that Frank came in through the back door. So they run in. He sees Harry, says, stay in your room no matter what you hear. Goes into Doris's bedroom and sees her about to get the wallop there from Frank with got his big sledgehammer.
Yeah, didn't she have like a bone sticking out of her arm?
She had some kind of gash or something on her. I think he took a swing with her.
I think they cut to a scene from the original episode 1 where they have her in the bathroom with the blood
kind of splattering.
Because I think that was a flashback. Because she was not that bloody, and if you would have had that much blood, someone would have been dead.
Yeah.
So I think that was kind of a flashback, but.
Yeah,
she was certainly getting attacked.
Yeah, because she had that big gash. I feel like he probably took a swing and probably just glanced and got her arm a little bit. Yeah. But Jake doesn't hesitate. He just pops him, shoots him right there in the shoulder, knocks him down, and then Frank hits the gun out of his hand. They get into a nice little fight there. Yeah, and Doris, he's able to get Frank distracted enough that Doris can make her way out of the room, head downstairs out of danger. And then we see Harry comes in, despite listening, not going to listen to Jake's warning. Whatever you hear, don't come in. I'm still going to come in. But does the cool thing, does take the sledgehammer away. Knows that his dad's a bad guy in that situation when he's drunk. That he's not going to try to listen to his dad when he's saying, give me that sledgehammer. And then we see Billy come up the stairs. And then we see Jake grab a electrical cord from a lamp. And then we see him strangle Frank right there in front of Billy.
Yep, takes him down. And then it's interesting where he completely just walked away. Just... obviously doesn't want to stick around long enough to have to answer any questions from the police when they show up. And just leaves the town, gets in the car.
But it was interesting that everybody just let him walk away too. Nobody's like, hey, hold on. Everybody just let him
She's
just
like,
keep
should I
going.
call the sheriff?
Is that real blood? No.
That's right. So he gets in his car and he drives for a little bit and then stops and he pulls over. It's starting to rain. He's washing off his hands. He feels like, I did it. I made a difference. I actually changed something. Harry's family's going to be great in the future. Everything's going to be fine.
And I like the moment when he's washing his hands and, like, in order to get it through his head that he's done a good thing, he's like, they're still alive. They're still alive. And you see, like, the degradation of this human being who's never killed somebody.
Yeah, because right before he does leave town, he does run into Edith one last time. And he's all bloodied and bruised and says, no matter how it looks like, I did a good thing.
Yeah.
And she says the only one that can judge you is God there at the final judgment. He's the only one that knows what really happened yet.
Exactly.
But then we find as he's just basking there in the rain, trying to celebrate this little small victory he's had with time, that all of a sudden Billy has a gun with him, pointed at Jake with a tattered newspaper clipping that Kennedy was assassinated in Dallas.
Yeah.
And said, hey, let's come with me. We're going to talk about this.
Yeah, which is also, he has reneged on his thing of going back to Maine and just giving it all up now because he saw that he was successful, that he did do a good thing, prevented these people from dying, and that has changed his mindset, and now he's going back to Dallas.
Maybe he has the courage now that, okay, I can shoot somebody, I can do this, or I can...
I'll be interested with the next episode. Is it that, or if Billy had not shown up with that, would he have just headed back right to Maine and gone back to the present day? It'd be curious to see what Billy's intervention is, how it's going to change what he's going to be doing now and back in 1960.
So, looks like he has a partner in crime, though.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see how long Billy sticks around for. I mean, since we haven't read the book or anything like that, we don't know how long Billy sticks around for.
Yeah.
I think it's good for him to have an ally, though.
Yeah.
That's true.
For mental strength.
But then I wonder about, the advice that he got about not getting too close to anybody.
That's true. Yeah.
I also wonder about how Harry turns out in the future now that he's seen a man like kill his father. So like, is that still traumatic?
Yeah.
You know,
Sure.
like all his so now like what happens to that guy? Is he any
still
better?
nice?
Is he
still sweet,
or is he a murderer?
Something else?
Yeah, and that'll clearly.
good
I'm
point.
guessing the last episode.
Yeah, we'll get back in
He'll
there.
probably come back in episode, the second to last episode, and then the last episode will be what has changed.
Yeah.
And he'll see Harry. I'm making the prediction that he'll get back with his ex-wife.
All right, well, I guess as you're making a prediction, we'll jump into some quick predictions, everybody.
And now, your AfterBuzz.
I'm saying that he gets. I'd say that he gets back with his ex-wife. It just seemed like because it seemed at the beginning when they said goodbye to each other that there was still obviously some feelings, and that he just needed to do something first and appreciate her and appreciate what they had.
because the picture of the two of them was still the background on his phone.
Yep.
I wonder if he's going to do something to prevent Al's death. Could he do that? Could he bring his friend back?
Yeah, likely. I mean, because he was saying, I'll see you in 2 minutes.
But he was already dead.
He was already dead, but if he goes back and does something specifically, like if he waits all the way until whatever, 2015, 2016, maybe he can prevent it.
And that's because that's true. I mean, him jumping back would then prevent. I mean, it erases everything that happened on the last trip. So I mean, theoretically, Al would not have gotten cancer. Theoretically, I mean, I think so. Al could still be in play.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Because I feel like everything is in flux until he actually goes back to present day Maine. So so even Harry, time
But
could push
when he
back.
goes back to present day, he's already dead.
Yes.
So he couldn't go back to prior death.
That's true. That's very
Right.
true.
All interesting.
Yeah, but I feel like
Interesting things
Harry's
there.
life is still in flux because time could push back on that as well. So we don't know until he goes back and solidifies it back in the present day. Who knows what could happen to Harry and his family?
Either way, I can't wait till next week.
I can't wait either.
All right, so until then, continue following the conversation or continue with us on Twitter, Facebook, like us on iTunes and Facebook. We'll continue the conversation. In the meantime, though, Michael, where can they find you?
You can find me on Instagram at @TheOnlyMC, on Twitter at MichaelClouse
Guys, it's been great. At Sasha Horne on Twitter and Instagram. Let's keep the conversation going.
Yeah, thanks for tuning in. The show is awesome. I can't wait to keep talking about it. You can find me on all social media at Marielou Mandl.
And you can follow me on Twitter at HappyGoJackie. Like us, as I said, on Facebook. Give us 5 stars on iTunes there. We'll be back here next week to break down episode 3 of 11/22/63. See you next time.
From executive producers Maria Menounos, Kevin Undergaro, Phil Svitek, and the entire AfterBuzz TV staff, we would like to thank you for listening to the AfterBuzz TV network. To watch or listen to other after shows and post comments or questions, be sure to visit AfterBuzzTV.com. I'm Sir Richard Wentworth, and this has been a presentation of AfterBuzz TV.
Buzz you later.
The views expressed herein are those of the hosts only and do not necessarily reflect the views of AfterBuzz TV or its owners or principals.